Welcome back to the Hope Champions podcast. This season, we're going to be looking at a lot of specifics on how hope is put into practice.
You know, John, prior to coming to Project Harmony, I spent 33 years in public education.
Ooh.
And, right, I'm really curious about how we can teach children to be hopeful. Because if we can teach it at an early age, wow, we can set them up for great success.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so excited to talk to Tracy Logan, who is the principal at Holling Heights here in Omaha, and she puts hope into action and teaches these children, these elementary children, to have hope every day, and sometimes, and the staff too, because it's important that we're all on board. She exudes hope.
Yeah, I'm really excited to learn from her.
Welcome to the Hope Champions podcast with Project Harmony. I'm Tessa.
I'm John.
And I'm Scott.
Join us as we explore the science of hope and its profound impact on healing right here on the Hope Champions podcast. I am pleased today to be with Tracy Logan.
So first of all, thank you so much for coming. Project Harmony, big fan. Big fan of yours.
Thank you.
So
And I'm a big fan of Project Harmony.
Oh,
so.
good. That works out great.
Yeah.
Let's just get into how you first learned about hope science.
So I had the opportunity probably over a decade ago to hear Dr. Lopez, who I kind of think is branded the guru of hope, talk a little bit about the concept of hope. And at that time, I was serving in a different community and our world was kind of in a different place. And I was intrigued by his message. I mean, who doesn't love talking about hopes and dreams and future-oriented actions and practices and how we get kids to create their own hopes and dreams? But for some reason, when I listened to the message 10 years ago, I was really missing some of the really important pieces of hope and thought of it more as kind of that concept of a dream or a wish. Mm-hmm. And probably about 5 years ago, I had the opportunity at a conference to go see Scott Butler in a breakout session. And I chose his session because I know Scott and I've always admired his work and I love how his intelligence and how he presents his work. And so when I listened, then probably about 5 years later, we were post-COVID. I was having the ability to be serving a different community at a different school. And all of a sudden, the hope just kind of really hit me as, man, I've really been missing something. And it wasn't necessarily the end goal of the hope, but it was the formula of getting there. And it was the concept of the pathways, the willways, and most importantly, the agency needed in order to reach those final goals and destinations. And it really made me think that this was a missing link for many of our students, for many educators out there across the country, as well as for our community as a whole. And so that really got me digging into the science of hope, motivated and energized about what can we do to build and strengthen hope for those we serve.
So then talk to me like him too. How did you do it?
Yeah. There were many pieces in the work that I guess in my values as a leader and my disposition as a leader that naturally have always been doing hope before I named it. I've always said that vulnerability and grace are two of the greatest dispositions that I strive to lead with and create in my culture. And those things, I think, naturally lead to hope in a culture or community. The other thing is we have prided ourselves at Holling Heights Elementary School in building lots of common language and common routines. And many of those have been hope-filled for a long time, but we weren't really calling them hope strategies. So the concept of every morning we state our 5 school expectations, and we talk about those. Those are our recipe to success. Those are what help us soar. We're the hawks to success and reach our hopes and dreams. And so we work hard to build that common language every single day.
Oh, I love it.
In the hopes that kids can start generalizing and using that kind of self-talk in their mind in those situations where they might need to remind themselves, or, you know, how all of us, our brains play tricks, and, you know, how we can re-regulate ourselves. The other common language thing that we've done for quite a while to build agency in kids is we start every day with the phrase on the announcements and in our Friday assemblies with make today a great day.
Aww.
The choice is always yours. And that kind of connects back to that agency piece of I get to play a role in how this all works out, even when it's hard. And then I guess the last common tool or the common language we've worked hard to build is giving kids a toolbox to self-regulate when those pathways shift or change or provide roadblocks or obstacles, so that they can lean into tools. And a lot of times those are self-regulation tools. So it might be tools to calm you, to be able to meet the expectations of that environment. They might be tools to alert you when you might be feeling down or tired, and all of those different emotions. So building that into every day, how we start every morning at Holling Heights, it's become a common language. And I think that language is pretty hope-filled.
So to implement all of that, you had to have everybody on board. So the teachers, your colleagues, maybe even parents. Was there any pushback or anything, or did everybody just jump in?
Yeah, I mean, building change in a culture is always a complex thing.
Yeah.
And so when you think about really getting effective change, you have to be considering all of those components, like who are we bringing into the decision-making process? How do we empower others to be part of the change versus doing it to them? And so I think when we also build the why for people, they can understand the power of it. So implementing those changes through the effective change process and change model, any change, is always incredibly important as a leader. So to say that we had resistance definitely would not be true. To say that people grabbed on at different points to the change is true. For some, you have to plant the seeds. For some, they have to have a model. For some, they have to watch the impact of it to believe it. And so change happens slowly when it comes to big cultural change. I'd say now we're at a point where it's not really what we do, it is what we do. I mean, it's not something we do, it's how we do business.
It's your culture.
It's the culture.
How long have you been doing this?
I have been at Holling Heights for 8 years.
Okay. So when you walk in and sometimes you feel like, oh, this is really working, but sometimes there's probably points where you can feel like hope is low. How can you tell?
Yeah. I think that hope is most important at our adult level. I do believe that as schools, we make decisions based on kids, but we can't miss the fact that if we don't have hopeful adults leading our children, leading our schools, then we really don't have hope. Our kids know what those adults are modeling, what they're feeling. And the hope science, and, Scott Butler was good to teach me this. I mean, if you look at the calendar year, there are times within a school year where we can predict that hope will be low.
Really?
Yes. And if you do any research on first year teachers and things, there's some predictable cycles throughout the months. Usually a new teacher will start very strong when it comes to hope or optimism and go through cycles. And so one of the things we know is like February can be a low hope month. And so sometimes we like to try to be proactive in that. So what can we do as a culture, right?
Yeah.
To promote higher levels of hope. And sometimes it's just the awareness. It's the awareness that, things might feel rough for teachers right now. So how do we as leaders increase visibility? How do we increase giving things to them that fuel them, be it, a staff meeting that's taken away and they get the gift of time, or maybe it's, a snack cart that goes around to just give them a moment of joy in their day. So it's being proactive, but there are times where you can feel that. And you do have to be able to respond, but you also have to let people go through their chapters and cycles.
Sure.
Because that's what hope is, right? Hope is, even when the staff is low, possibly in February, we're going to come out of this. Like, this is a chapter. It's not who we are. It's a chapter in our story, but it's not the whole story. So sometimes it's just meeting people with grace and saying, yeah, things are hard right now. And hopefully just that grace and that vulnerability installs enough hope to make it through that chapter to get to that next level of strengthened hope.
Oh, it's beautiful. What is your hope for the future?
Well, I think about my hope for the future. I'm going to talk just specifically about Holling Heights Elementary School.
Yes.
My hope for the future is that we can give kids the academic skills, the emotional skills, the dispositions, the agency, so that they can leave our school, even into adulthood, and they can reach whatever their hopes and dreams are, that they have the skills, the abilities, the talents to reach those hopes and dreams, and that those hopes and dreams can break cycles of trauma, cycles of poverty. And that's really then where this little 300 kids school of Holling Heights can make a difference in our larger community and world. And I believe that we are doing that, and that we do have the agency to do it.
When you're planting these seeds at this young age and then they leave the school, what's the hope for that? Can we get into the other schools and teach hope there?
Yeah. It's a really great question. That question in itself can sometimes feel hopeless because we talk a lot about really focusing our energies on the things that are within our sandbox. There are so many things that happen outside of the 8 hours we have kids that it can be challenging for hope to think, how can I make a difference when all of these things are happening, or they're going to head to middle school and their world's going to get bigger. And so we really, really work hard to stay and keep our energy within our sandbox. We hope that the gifts that we can give them, hopefully we get them for the 6 years, or maybe even if they're in preschool with us, those 7 years, that they will be strong enough to stick with them and be at their core of their values and their human, so that they're lifelong gifts. We are really lucky to be part of a great feeder school system. Ultimately, our kids, most of our kiddos end up at Millard South High School. And they also have a very, very hope-rich culture. They might not call it hope, and they might not be into the hope science, but their actions and disposition reflect what a hope culture would reflect. One of the greatest things that we get as educators, one of the greatest gifts is towards the end of the school year, usually the last day of school or so, the Millard South graduates that went to Holling Heights will come back to the school in their caps and gowns. And we have them speak to our kids about hope, about dreams. They talk about what their future hopes or dreams are, but they also talk about what hopes and dreams they've conquered in high school. And we have them identify what were the barriers, what were the shifts and the pathways that you had to take to get those, and what were your dispositions and your will ways that you had to practice in order to get there. And I would say that event itself is so hope fueling to our students, but mostly to our staff, because they see like, this isn't just a gift I'm giving them today or this year or these 6 years. Like, we're sending great humans out to the world as a result of our work and then the continuum of middle school and high school's work.
Oh, it must be extremely satisfying.
It is. It is very hard to facilitate those conversations without getting extremely emotional and crying, because it is one of the most beautiful events that we get as educators.
Oh, I love that. And again, when you were saying they talk honestly about the barriers that, you know, they're being vulnerable.
Yes, absolutely.
And even if they didn't go to a great feeder school, I think of like my mom saying to me, you know, I'm not always going to be with you.
Yeah,
so like, you just really have to have it. And you guys are putting those seeds in them. And I think it's fantastic. What other things about hope could you tell me?
Yeah, I think when we think of hope, especially in the education setting, there is some work that has been done around some different concepts that, in my mind, connect to hope. So John Hattie is an educational researcher, and he does basically this meta-analysis of hundreds and hundreds of factors that happen in schools, be it research-based, you know, practices in teaching, reading, behavior management, all of those things. And he works to see which ones have the greatest impact on our ultimate goal, which is academic outcomes. And his research has shown that the concept of collective efficacy is, out of these 257 factors, the most powerful on student outcomes. And that was research that I heard way before I got into the science of hope. And it was so intriguing and energizing for me, because I think of all of the things that we do in education. We, you know, when it comes to reading curriculums and math curriculums and strategies for this and writing strategies and all these things that we're putting in front of our educators, when really the most important thing that we can do to impact kids is really lives within our culture. And collective efficacy starts with self-efficacy, which is the belief I have the ability, the confidence, the skills to make a difference. You get a lot of self-efficacy, and it leads to a collective efficacy, which is together as a collaborative whole, we have the ability, the confidence to make a difference. And when you think about that, that's hope, right?
Right.
So we know all this research on hope about, you know, physical, mental, emotional well-being, but it is the key to school success. And that was really, when I processed that, that brings a lot of like pressure, because you know the culture's so important, but it also brings like, this is where it's at. Like, this is where we have to invest as a school leader most of our energy and our ability and our focus, because this is the most powerful indicator.
In layman's terms, being on the same page, everybody.
Absolutely. But it is also that agency. I can make a difference.
Yes.
I have the power. And, you know, we talk so much about teacher shortages now across our country, and it's such a big issue. And I believe, and I think our research would, that the lack of hope is really what has caused that.
Absolutely.
Our kiddos come with just, and I'll use Project Harmony terms, just these invisible backpacks that are so heavy. And as a teacher, we look at these kids walking through our doors and we think, how would I ever be able to help this kid change, you know, the trajectory for this child with these heavy, heavy backpacks? But when we have hope in that, and we have systems that can support teachers in that journey, we start, you know, getting this momentum going, and then success breeds success. And so we start feeling, yeah, I do have the ability. It's in my power to make a difference. And then we continue to see those patterns kind of ripple into greater success momentum.
Before you go, I do want to know if you could just tell me your history with Project Harmony.
Project Harmony has been something that I have valued as an organization in our community for many years. Early on in my administration, I remember having one of my hardest moments as an administrator was watching a child get taken from school with an officer, a very, very young child, a preschooler. And that was probably my first experience with that, and thinking, just what is that child feeling? This scaredness, the anxiety. And I didn't really know much about Project Harmony then. And then I remember the next day he came back carrying a stuffed animal. And I thought, wow. And the more I learned about Project Harmony and what they provide for those kids in their most vulnerable and terrifying moments of their life, I thought, wow, this is important work that they're doing. And I know Project Harmony does lots of other work. So I had an opportunity then to volunteer and do some volunteer work. My husband and I were co-chairs of the Halfway to St. Patrick's Day a couple of years ago. And through that work, I got to know the people. I participated in several of their trainings. I've brought trainings into our staff. Unfortunately, in my new principal role, I work a lot with Project Harmony because of the needs of the students that we serve. And all of those experiences have been positive as a result of the really important work that Project Harmony has been doing.
Tracy, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Hope carries on. I just want to thank you for listening to the Hope Champions podcast with Project Harmony. For more information about the podcast or how you can become a Hope Champion in your community, visit our website at projectharmony.com/Hope Champions. Listen, rate, and subscribe to the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you like to listen to podcasts. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Project Harmony, and on X at Project Harmony 2. Thanks again for listening, and remember, hope looks good on you.